Even in this electronic age, there are printed sources which have useful information, especially on physical properties. Every library you work in will have a section of reference books. When you get to your campus libraries, you can compare the list that's here. This is what is at City College. If some of these seem useful to you and your campus library doesn't have it, you can always come to City College to look at them. A very useful source is the Encyclopedia of Chemical Technology. It is usually known by its first editors, Kirk and Othmer. These were two esteemed chemists who worked at what was then Brooklyn Polytech. This encyclopedia has been through many different editions. The current edition is the 5th edition. You notice that I listed the previous editions because if a library does collect this encyclopedia, it is always good to keep the old editions because sometimes you are looking up something which is not in the new edition. A few things about using it. In any encyclopedia, especially this one, you start your search in the index volume. It is very complete, it is very detailed. This encyclopedia is not like a dictionary where you can just look up your term in alphabetical order. The articles tend to be very long, and what you're looking at is under a different title most of the time. Even though it says Encyclopedia of Chemical Technology, there is a lot of good basic chemistry in here. It's not just for chemical engineers. This encyclopedia has been published by John Wiley, a very good scientific publisher that is very strong in chemistry. It used to be known just as InterScience. The encyclopedia always had a competitor called the Ullmann's Encyclopedia of Industrial Chemistry. It was published by VCH, a competitor to Wiley. Several years ago, VCH merged with Wiley, and there was a question about whether or not they were going to continue publishing the Ullmann's Encyclopedia. These days, the Kirk-Othmer Encyclopedia exists in print, and it exists online. We just have the print version at City College. The Ullmann's Encyclopedia stopped printing in 1985, and now it is just online, and we do have access it at City College. These two encyclopedias complement each other. Continuing with some of the reference books we have at City College, a lot of other libraries will have these also. There's this useful series called Techniques of Chemistry, Physical Methods of Chemistry. It's usually known by its editor, Weisberger. It's a little out of date at this point, but it's very large and very comprehensive. It's a very good place to look up a technique which you see described in the literature and you don't really know the exact details and you're kind of embarrassed to ask somebody. Like suppose you are reading a paper and it says to do a Soxhlet extraction. It's probably something very new to you, and this is a good place to look it up. A smaller book, which is just as useful, is called The Chemist's Companion. And again, we have it at City College. You could see if your campus library has it also. It answers a lot of questions, very practical things that you need a little help on. Continuing down the list, for analytical chemists, we have this Encyclopedia of Analytical Science. It may be a little out of date now, but a lot of basic techniques are explained. Looking at data and tables, the first one I've listed, which every library will have, is the CRC Handbook of Chemistry and Physics. It's been through several editions. There's a new edition every couple of years. It changes very little. I don't know about you, but when I was taking organic chemistry, one assignment before every lab was to go to the Handbook of Chemistry and Physics and look up the basic physical properties of the substances we are working on. There are two very big and very useful tables. One is a table of organic compounds, the other is inorganic compounds. A useful series of reference books is the Lontop-Bornstein Numerical Data and Functional Relationships. It is mostly about physics, but it does have a lot of good physical chemistry data in it. In the past, the only way to use this German language series were two big charts, which I would show the class if we were live, which helped guide you to which volume had the data you were seeking. In recent years, they put an online aid on an online index, which is a very big help. In the Science Engineering Library at City College, we also have an English language book, which is a complete guide to help you find the volume where the data you are seeking is located. Just to give you one example of how useful this is, a few years ago, somebody from the City College Physics Department needed index of refraction data on all the common glasses. We found the chart, even though the chart was totally in German. It had all the glasses listed with their exact index of refraction, a very complete chart. For biochemistry, an important reference series is Methods in Enzymology. It started in 1955, over 400 volumes to date. It started out only in print. It was very easy to find the volume you needed because the subject was always printed in large type on the binding. Even though it says enzymology, it covers all areas of enzymology, biochemistry, biophysics, and even molecular biophysics. We have access to it at Science Direct, which you should be able to get at any CUNY campus. Just follow these steps and you will be into the methods in enzymology. For inorganic chemists, we have this Technique of Inorganic Chemistry, 7 volumes. It's a little old, but it does cover the basics of inorganic chemistry. I've listed 2 other sources at the top of this screen, also in inorganic chemistry. Organic chemistry has many more reference sources and indexes. It's a much bigger field than inorganic chemistry. The second one on this list, Methoden der organischen Chemie, it sounds like it's German, and it is in German. It's usually known by its editor's names, Huben Weil. You have to know a little German to use it. In recent years, a new English language version of Huben Weil has been published. It's called Science of Synthesis. We have a few books at City College in this series. They're very expensive. They were donated to us. It is also an online database which CUNY does not subscribe to. Even though the Science of Synthesis is totally in English, and the same synthesis may be listed in this English language version and in the old German version, I asked the editors if the Science of Synthesis replaces Huben Weil, the German version, and they said absolutely not. The reason for that is that synthesis goes in and out of style. You may look up a compound that you want to synthesize. There may be a version in the Science of Synthesis. There may be a different version of it, a different procedure in the original Huben Weil. So it's always good to consult both of these printed publications. As you look down this list, you see other series which have been around a long time and they are still publishing: Organic Reactions, Organic Syntheses, which even has an online index. Organic Syntheses is so big there's even a separate book, a reaction guide. You can look at some of the other sources that here. I want to point out Fieser and Fieser. They were a husband and wife team at Harvard University. They published an organic chemistry textbook, which is kind of out of style. It's not used anymore, but they were excellent writers. They wrote very clearly. Their series, Reagents for Organic Synthesis, is a little old at this point, but if you find what you need there, you can be reassured that it's very well explained. There's also another Weisberger book, a series of 11 volumes, which focuses on techniques of organic chemistry. It's just like the other Weisberger series. If you're looking up a procedure and you don't really know what it is, it will be explained very well here. These Weisberger series are not used as much as they should be. There's also Theilheimer's Synthetic Methods of Organic Chemistry. It's been published starting in 1942, as you see. It also exists in an online version, which CUNY does not have. A very useful publication is this one-volume reference book called the Merck Index. It has been published for decades. Don't confuse the Merck Index with the similar title, the Merck Manual. The Merck Manual is a brief medical textbook. The Merck Index has brief descriptions of common substances. It's listed alphabetically by name. If you know a different name, there's a name index in the back of the Merck Index. There's also a formula index. Before opening any bottle of reagent, it's always good to look at the Merck Index. You want to know if what you are using is poisonous or toxic, or if you have to take other precautions. I was once using N-methylacridane, which is phenanthrene 3-fused benzene rings with a nitrogen in the middle ring. And before I opened the bottle, I took a look in the Merck Index, and it says vapors cause sneezing. Even though it's a powder, it doesn't really give vapors. As soon as I opened the bottle and put my nose over it, I started sneezing. So you get this very useful and practical information in the Merck Index. Every lab should have a copy of it. Another useful publication, it's like an expanded version of the Merck Index, is the Dictionary of Organic Compounds. At City College, we have the 5th edition, and we also have the 4th edition. The reason why we keep the older edition is the same reason we try to keep the older editions of the Kirk-Othmer Encyclopedia. There is some information in the older edition, which is not in the current edition. This dictionary also exists as an online database, which very few people subscribe to. This is just a continuation of the sample record, which you will see inside the cover of the Dictionary of Organic Compounds. What I've listed here is the Chemistry LibGuide, the Physical tab, which we looked at before. If you scroll down toward the bottom of it, I put some printed materials which are in the library at City College. Again, not every library has these. You will see some of the reference books which I listed above, and a few others which I haven't. Beilstein is toward the bottom of the screen. We will have a separate lesson on that. I repeated the Lontold-Bornstein with links to the different online aids and indexes. The Gmelin Handbook of Inorganic Chemistry is this vast source that we will have a separate lesson on. I've also listed a few other printed things which are in the library. Finally, 2 other sources which are in the Science Engineering Library at City College. I didn't think they were important enough to list above, but these very detailed and very specific reference sources may sometimes be useful for you. Not every library has these.